between doing audits or heading out on what might be a wild goose chase, he'd choose geese any day. He dragged a reluctant Andrews away from his perusal of the rota, and they headed off on the short drive to St. Monica's Church. "Is that the sacristan, Peter?" West asked as he turned into the car park and pulled up near the front of the church. Broad, shallow steps led up to the wide double doors, one side of which stood open. A man leaned against the shut door. His unnatural stillness and pallor were striking and told West clearly that Blunt had been right. It was going to be a bad one. He should have known. Blunt had an uncanny ability to sense when something was wrong. "Yep, that's Joe Ryan," Andrew said. "I know him to see, that's all. Joyce and I come to Mass here now and then because Joyce likes the choir. Ryan is known to be very efficient. The sacristan's role has grown over the years. Nowadays they run everything. It's him you have to meet to organise christenings and weddings." Andrews waited a beat to let that sink in before continuing. "Basically, he runs the church. If you want to know anything about St. Monica's, he's the man to ask." West pulled disposable shoe covers from a box behind his seat and handed a pair to Andrews. "I suppose we'd better go and have a word with him." As they climbed the steps towards the door, they heard a hum that made both stop and look around. "What is that?" West said, eyes scanning the surroundings. It was Andrews who identified the cause. "It's coming from the sacristan. I think he's praying." The sound grew louder as they reached the top step. Andrews, of course, was right. West couldn't hear the words, but he recognized the cadence. The sacristan was indeed praying, his lips moving incessantly, the rest of his face and body rigid. West felt the muscles in his belly clench. The sacristan looked to be in shock. It seemed that Blunt had underestimated the situation. This was going to be much worse than bad. "Mr. Ryan," West addressed the sacristan quietly. It was a few seconds before Ryan's eyes focused, and a few more before the recitation stopped. "Can you tell us what happened?" West said into the heavy, uncomfortable silence. He was used to dealing with members of the public who accidentally became involved with crime, but it never got easier, and he wasn't surprised when the sacristan's lips twisted in horror, one of his bony hands creeping up to cover them, as if afraid of what they might say. His other hand, trembling uncontrollably, pointed through the open door behind him. West looked at Andrews and shook his head. They'd get a statement from the man when the shock had worn off. "I can't see past the entrance hall." Andrews peered into the church. "Vestibule," West corrected him automatically. Not that it made any difference what it was called. It was a dull, grey day, and the little light that managed to slide through the outside doors dispersed the darkness within, but not the shadows. The inner double doors on the far side of the vestibule were shut. Whatever had shocked the sacristan so badly lay beyond. West and Andrews slipped on shoe covers and headed through the open door. They moved slowly, checking the darker corners of the small vestibule, their hands resting lightly on their holstered weapons. When they reached the inner doors, they stopped and listened for any sound from within. West slipped on a pair of vinyl gloves, met Andrew's eyes in silent agreement, and reached for the brass handle. It opened outward, and immediately there was the recognizable smell of every church West had ever been in, a mix of furniture polish and incense that brought him back to childhood years of compulsory church-going. Nowadays, his a la carte Catholicism rarely brought him inside a church, but the scent continued to invoke old memories. Good ones, mostly. He brushed them aside and stepped into the body of the church, with Andrews close behind. St. Monica's Church was designed in the way of most traditional churches. A wide central aisle ran from the entrance doors through